Hello, welcome to the Self-Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Chapter 2, Social Change and Social Order in Rural and Urban Society. It is often said that change is the only unchanging aspect of society. Anyone living in modern society does not need to be reminded that constant change is among the most permanent features of our society. In fact, the discipline of sociology itself emerged as an effort to make sense of the rapid changes that Western European society had experienced between the 17th and 19th centuries. But though social change seems such a common and obvious fact about modern life, it is, comparatively speaking, a very new and recent fact. It is estimated that the human beings have existed on planet Earth for approximately 500,000 years or 5 lakhs, but they have has a civilized existence for only about 6,000 years. Of these civilized years, it is only in the last 400 years that we have seen constant and rapid change. Even within these years of change, the pace has accelerated only in the last 100 years. Because the speed with which change happens has been increasingly steady, it is probability true that in last 100 years change has been faster in the last 50 years than in the first 50 years. And within the last 50 years, the world may have changed more in the last 20 years than in the first 30 years. Now let us discuss the topic social change. Social change is such a general term that it can be and often is used to refer to almost any kind of change not qualified by some other terms, such as economic or political change. Sociologists have had to work hard to limit this broad meaning in order to make the term more specific and hence useful for social theory. At the most basic level, social change refers to changes that are significant, that is, changes which alter the underlying structure of an object or situation over a period of time. Thus, social change does not include any and all changes, but only big ones, changes which transform things fundamentally. The bigness of change is measured not only by how much change it brings about, but also by the scale of the change, that is, by how large a section of society it affects. In other words, changes have to be both intensive and extensive, have a big impact spread over a large sector of society. In order to qualify as social change, even after this kind of specification, social change still remains a very broad term. Attempts to further qualify it usually try to classify it by its sources or causes, by its nature, or the kind of impact it has on society, and by its pace or speed. For example, evolution is the name given to a kind of change that takes place slowly over a long period of time. This term was made famous by the natural scientist Charles Darwin, who proposed a theory of how living organisms evolve or change slowly over several centuries or even millennia by adapting themselves to the natural circumstances. Darwin's theory emphasized the idea of the survival of the fittest. Only those life forms manage to survive who are best adapted to their environment. Those that are unable to adapt or are slow to do so die out in the long run. Darwin suggested that the human beings evolved from seaborne life forms or varieties of fish to land-based mammals, passing through various stages, the highest of which were the various varieties of monkeys and chimpanzees, until finally the Homo sapien or Homo human form was evolved. Although Darwin's theories referred to natural processes, it was soon adapted to the social world and was termed social Darwinism, a theory that emphasized the importance of adaptive change. In contrast to evolutionary change, change that occurs comparatively quickly, even suddenly, is sometimes called revolutionary change. It is used mainly in the political context when the power structure of society changes very rapidly through the overthrow of a former ruling class or group by its challengers. Examples include the French Revolution 1789 to 93 and the Soviet or Russian Revolution of 1917. But the term has also been used more generally to refer to sharp, sudden, and total transformations of other kinds as well, such as in the phrase Industrial Revolution or Telecommunication Revolution, and so on. Types of change that are identified by their nature or impact include structural change and changes in ideas, values, and beliefs. Structural change refers to transformations in the structure of society and its institutions or the rules by which these institutions are run. For example, the emergence of paper money as currency marked a major change in the organization of financial markets and transactions. Until this change came about, most form of currency involved precious metals like gold and silver. The value of the coin was directly linked to the value of the gold or silver it contained. By contrast, the value of a paper currency note has no relationship to the value of the paper it is printed on or the cost of its printing. The idea behind paper money was that a medium or means of facilitating the exchange of goods and services need not itself be intrinsically valuable, as long as it represents values convincingly, as long as it inspires trust. Almost anything can function as money. This idea was the foundation for the credit market and helped change the structure of banking and finance. These changes in turn produced further changes in the organization of economic life. Changes in values and beliefs can also lead to social change. For example, changes in the ideas and beliefs about children and childhood have brought about very important kinds of social change. There was a time when children were simply considered small adults. There was no special concept of childhood as such, with its associated notions of what was right or wrong for children to do. As late as 19th century, for example, it was considered good and proper that children start to work as soon as they were able to. Children were often helping their families at work from the age of 5 or 6. The early factory system depended on the labor of children. It was during 19th and early 20th centuries that the ideas about childhood as a special stage of life gained influence. It then became unthinkable for small children to be at work, and many countries passed laws banning child labor. At the same time, there emerged ideas about compulsory education, and children were supposed to be in school rather than at work, and many laws were passed for this as well. Although there are some industries in our country that even today depend on child labor, at least partially, such as carpent weaving, small tea shops or restaurants, matchstick making, and so on. Child labor is illegal and employers can be punished as criminals. But by far the most common way of classifying social change is by its causes or sources. Sometimes the causes are pre-classified into internal and external causes. Internal causes are endogenous and external causes are exogenous. These are five broad types of sources or causes of social change: environmental, technological, economic, political, and culture. Now, let us wind up the session and thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning Podcast.